Hi everyone, wanting to do a final wrap-up summary of the 5 main types of 7th chords here. I have a video on each one specifically, but here's a nice way to view them collectively. I like to start, first I'll just name it. We have the major 7 chord, major 7 chord, aka the dominant 7, minor 7 chord, half diminished 7 chord, fully diminished 7 chord. Now, with all major chords, the reason for the double word, major, minor, is we have to qualify 2 aspects of it. The type of triad it is and the type of 7th it is. I like to start with the biggest chord being major, then step down, it shrinks to major minor, aka dominant, then it shrinks to minor, then it shrinks to half diminished, then it shrinks to fully diminished. So, to start with the easiest to find here would be a C major 7, C major 7, but it just gets shorthanded to major 7 because it's funny to say major. So we have a major triad, and then we have a major 7. 2 ways to view intervals. Either think about just the amount of half steps, whole steps. Very common people like to think of a major 7th as just a half step away from an octave. Or also major 7 because it's part of the C major scale. But there you go. That's as big as a major 7, as a 7th chord. Yeah, so here's C major. Now for the next biggest, the 7th, we flat it. This is known mostly as a dominant 7 chord or just a 7 chord. If anyone says a 7th chord, it is defaulted assumed to be this kind of chord, a dominant 7 chord, aka major minor 7th chord. So if someone says C7, this is what you default to. If they want any other one, they have to specify it. C major 7, C minor 7. If it just says C7, it's this type. Mostly we can just think it's just the most common one. And to explain the terms here again, major minor, major triad, minor 7th. We could think a minor 7th is a whole step from an octave, or a minor 7th from C minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whatever is easiest for you. So a major triad, a minor 7th interval. Hence major minor. Why is it called dominant? Not to get too deep in the weeds, but dominant is the 5th scale degree of any scale. It's like the most important, relationship. So if I'm doing a C dominant 7, what's 5 notes lower than this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th note of F major, you build a 5 chord on it, a 7th chord, and that really wants to go to the 1 chord. So that would be why it's called dominant, because that's the relationship. 5 to 1 is a dominant relationship. Cool. So on to the next one. We have major 7, dominant 7, aka major minor 7. Then a minor 7, fully explained as minor 7. Minor triad, minor 7. Combine it. I like these chords, they just sound really pretty. I'm just doing some random inversions. Now we shrink it again to a half diminished. So we've already shrank the 7th. We started with a major, which is as big as a 7th can get. Well, sort, you can kind of do an augmented 7th. Well, let's not worry about it. So then we shrank that. So we already screwed with the 7th. So we have one other note to screw with, and that would be the 5th, which is what you do to make diminished chords. So here's a C minor. Here's a C diminished. You diminish, you shrink the 5th a half step. So a half diminished chord is half diminished. The chord is diminished, but the interval is minor. So you could call this like a diminished minor 7, but people just say half diminished because it's just part of it's diminished. 1/2 of the necessary ingredients is diminished. The triad is diminished, but not the 7th. And that's also very cool. It's kind of Reminds me of old-timey films. And then the final one, a fully diminished 7 chord. But mostly people just say a diminished chord or a diminished 7, which is technically wrong if you're hanging out with a theory professor. It should be called fully diminished because both aspects are diminished. We got the diminished triad here, and then with the 7th, we had a major 7th, we shrank it to a minor, and now we diminish it. So we flat the flat, you know, so now the B shrinks even more to what looks like an A, but it would be called a B double flat. We can't call it an A, even though it's enharmonically the same note. If I call this an A or a B double flat or a G double sharp, I know those seem annoying when you're playing piano because it's just easy to view this as an A, but we need to keep the integrity of the 7th. No matter what, a 7th has to be some type of C to B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Once we call it C to A, now that's not a 7th. It's not 7 notes away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would be written as C to A. That's C to E, F, G, A, 6 notes. So we need to keep the integrity of C to B. And that's kind of a reason why stuff like double flats exist, because we need to come up with some way to explain a B that's here. So we start with a major, we shrink it, minor 7, shrink it again, B flat the flat, a B double flat, and there we go. We get a fully diminished 7 chord. Here's the diminished triad and the diminished 7th, C to B double flat. And well, to recap this, I started with the biggest, major, major, shrank it, dominant 7, aka major minor, shrank it again, minor minor 7, shrank it again, half diminished 7, then the full shrink, fully diminished 7. I'll do it in one other location. I'll do it on G. There's a G major major 7. You could think here, half step away, major major, then we shrink it, the 7th shrinks to that dominant 7 or major minor. Now we shrink it again, this time the 3rd, to turn the major chord to a minor. Great. Now minor triad, minor 7th. Now for the half diminished, we shrink the triad, but keep that minor 7. And then the full thing. Now the chord's already diminished, so now we diminish the 7th to fully diminish it. F flat. Cool. And I just like to kind of stack it like that. Major, dominant, minor, half, fully. Cool. So I hope that video helped you guys out. Please subscribe and comment. I appreciate everyone. And see you next time.